NATO officially handed over another area to the Afghan security forces on Wednesday. The handover of Lashkar Gah in the often volatile Helmand province was the third of 7 planned for this month. The other 2 handed over areas were also hit by violence this month. 4 areas are still to be handed over by the end of July, including most of Kabul province. Joining us now, Ambassador Simon Gass, who's the senior civilian representative for NATO in Afghanistan. He's in Kabul. Ambassador, thanks for being with us. You were in Lashkar Gah today, I understand. Am I right in thinking that the government there has only the most tenuous grip on power?
Well, I wouldn't quite say that. The governor there, Governor Mangal, has been an extremely effective governor. He's worked very well with ISAF forces. He is very well respected there, as always in Afghanistan, and not only in Afghanistan, of course. There is a great deal of politicking that goes on, but Governor Mangal has been the governor of Helmand province for some years. He was a provincial governor in 2 provinces before that, so he's a pretty experienced politician.
OK, outside the city limits, it is still extremely dangerous. Helmand province, notorious. How on earth could somewhere like this, a city in the middle of a province like that, be considered suitable for transition to Afghan security control?
Well, actually, the position in Helmand has changed a great deal over the last year or so. And if you look at some of the districts, which are quite large districts around Lashkar Gah, you see that violence rates have fallen dramatically. In Marja, for example, which only a number of months ago was a stronghold for the Taliban, we've seen violence rates fall 70% year on year. So although it is true that parts of Helmand, particularly in the north, are still highly contested by the insurgents, actually in the centre of the province and even towards the south, the situation is much calmer than it was.
Okay. I put it to you that the Afghan forces are nowhere near as well equipped as NATO forces. I mean, surely the Taliban is just waiting now to strike at this weakened force. It's a recipe for disaster, isn't it?
Well, look, even over the last 18 months, by the end of this year, we will have trained about 300,000 Afghan army and police who are becoming increasingly effective. And the way in which they have dealt recently with some very complex and difficult insurgent attacks in places like Kandahar and Herat has been really impressive. Now, we still have another 3.5 years to go before transition is due to be completed, and that training is going to be continuing. The equipment levels for the armed forces are going up. And bear in mind one other thing, one thing which I find is that when you put Afghan troops out onto the streets, because they understand their environment so much better than ISAF troops do, in many ways they're able to avoid problems which might otherwise arrive on the doorstep of foreign troops.
You paint a very positive picture, and yet, I mean, even today there are reports now of, 3 more policemen killed in Kandahar. Another example of just how far the country has to go before it becomes stable and secure.
Well, you're right, there is further to go. We're up against a very resilient enemy here in Afghanistan. They have taken a tremendous beating on the battlefield when they have come up against Afghan forces or ISAF forces. And one thing which they're doing, of course, is resorting to more suicide attacks and more assassinations. Now, that is very difficult to deal with. Nevertheless, we are absolutely resolved, and more importantly, our Afghan partners are really resolved to pursue the course of transition, because of course it is absolutely right, and this was President Karzai's goal, that we should be able to hand the security lead over to Afghan forces throughout Afghanistan by the end of 2014, and I'm pretty confident we'll be able to do that.
Thank you, sir. Good to talk to you. Really appreciate you spending time with us. That's Simon Gass, senior civilian representative for NATO in Afghanistan, speaking there live.